All right, mic check. Testing, testing. David, how are we looking? Good? All right, good morning, everybody. Today is August 13th. We're going to call this Green Valley Special Utility District meeting to order. We are having a special called board meeting today. All board members are currently present and accounted for. If everybody can stand for the invocation and pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the blessings you bestowed upon Green Valley. Please keep them coming because we so much appreciate everything you've done for us so far and continue to do for us. Please give us the knowledge and the wisdom today to make the decisions needed to make this company greater than it ever has been and take care of our ratepayers and our employees the same. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, public comment, agenda item C. We have no one for public comment, so we are moving on to the consent agenda. Item D, all items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the board and will be approved by one motion. There will be no discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered and action taken as necessary as part of the order of business. D1 is July 27th, 2024 board meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Awesome. Ayes have it. Going to item E, review and approve rate adjustments for fiscal year 25 and take action as necessary. Mr. Gage.
Good morning. Is this working okay? Okay, so today, while we pull up the presentation, we have one presentation to present to the board today. We'll get that up on the screen so it can be seen. So basically what I'm going to try to do this morning is make the complicated simple and go through what we recommend is a change to our rates for FY25. Where we sit right now in the fiscal year, as you all know, is we're in budget season. And one key aspect to that is projecting our revenues correctly in order to, capture what our expenses are going to be and finally end up with a budget that we'll get the board to approve, in the coming board meetings. So we'll start out and I'll walk us through this chart. I intend on kind of hitting the highlights and answering your questions as we go forward. So the first chart here is kind of the background and information of where we are and what we're asking the board to do today. So bottom line up front, we are going to recommend a course of action to the board. And then at the end of this, we'll ask for your decision and vote. The rate study back in 2023, Green Valley contracted NewGen to do a rate study for us. It was a 5-year rate study. That rate study resulted in, go back, there you go. That rate study resulted in the board voting to approve a 5% increase for water and an 8% increase for wastewater that year. You took that vote last year, July of 23. As we looked through the rate study, the 5-year rate study from NewGen, they also recommended that every year we revisit the rates, whether or not we should conduct an increase or not based on the rate study. Everything from in the rate study from 25 to 28 is really based on assumptions, and I'm going to go over some of those. And it really centers around growth rate. What are we growing in terms of meters for water meters, but also the number of customers for wastewater connections. And the last bullet there, the rate study generally remains pretty valid. We do deviate in wastewater, and there's some reasons for that I'll highlight to you. When the rate study was actually done, we did not have a wastewater master plan that really captured, what the growth was going to be. We had a wastewater master plan from 2006, but it did not anticipate, the growth that we're going to have in wastewater. So we've got some figures and things in here that kind of projects what the future looks like for wastewater while we're in process of getting our wastewater master plan completed to have some better data. So right there in the box in the center of the chart, so I'm going to lay out 4 options for you, option A, B, C, and D, and I'll walk through those and show you what the base rates are. I'll give you some examples for typical ratepayers' bills as we go through all of those rates. And then the last option, option D, is always a board option. You can choose to take no action at all. Either one of these options or no action at all. And as I said, we are going to recommend water increase by 8% and wastewater increase by 8%. And I'll lay out the case to do that as we go forward. So why don't you give me the next slide? So right now, this slide represents, it can be found on our website every day. You can find it today. This is the rates that we're paying, or I'm sorry, these are the rates for our water to include the base rate per meter size and then the gallonage per thousand. And there's different tiers there. As you notice, and I'll highlight this later in the presentation, everyone's on the same base rate residential with the exception of Lake McQueeney Estates. And I'll have a dive down slide on that particular one later in the presentation. But this is where we're sitting right now. This is published on the website, public information for all to see. Next chart, please. Okay, when we get into the growth assumptions, so this is the water and wastewater. So right now, to date this year, we're running on a calendar date, by the way, for meter sets, not an FY. Right now, we've set 740 meters to date in this year. We're on track to set 1,000, and that's about where we were last year. And last year we hit about 1,100 or so, I believe was the number last year. But we're on track to hit 1,000 again this year. So we're at a steady clip on the water side, and that's expected to continue, for several years now. So that part's valid. Where we get into, not so valid or some deviation from the growth assumptions is in the wastewater side. The rate study, you can see there, it was projected in 24, 715 connections. That just hasn't materialized. I mean, we're much lower than that. We're year to date, we've got 254 connections, and we think we're on track to have 294 by the end of the year. But the story is really not told in just the wastewater connections. It's better told in the flow rate or gallons that we're using because of the capacity of our Santa Clara, plant right now. So that's what's given us, the concerns on wastewater is our capacity issues, not necessarily connections. Now we're projected in wastewater to increase very quickly as we have new developments come online. But when those new developments come online, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll all go vertical and we'll have all that flow at one time, but the capability will be there, and that's going to rocket forward. So overall, for our growth assumptions, we're largely on track, but we know wastewater is much bigger than it's shown in the briefing.
The growth rate is
the
larger.
Growth, yes. The growth rate, yes, sir. Next chart, please. Okay, for this one, I'm going to dive in, talk water first, and then I'll talk wastewater. So the chart that's in the center there, that's from the rate study last year. So when the board voted to approve a 5% water rate increase last year, that's our starting point. When you were given this presentation a year ago, you were given two options. You were given a 5.5 water and a 7.5 water. The board voted on a 5%, therefore the chart is starting at a 5% in FY24. But you were given a 7.5 recommendation last year, just for comparison. Along here too, with this 5% increase in 25, the rate study recommended that we go to 8%. And you see there's 3 footnotes on the bottom of this chart. Footnote number 1, AW Texas was not affected. It said that increase did not affect AW Texas, and it was not affected. Footnote number 2 talked about the adjustment to a wholesale customer. That wholesale customer is Water Service, Inc. or / doing business as Southwest Water Company. It was not moved to a commercial rate. The rate study suggested that we do that. That actually did not happen. And then the third bullet is McQueeney Estates was not increased to match the base rates. And that also didn't happen, but the study projected that would happen. That was the recommendation. I'll dive into all 3 of those a little bit deeper when we get into the rates. But this was the recommendation from the the rate study that we commissioned last year. Go to the next one to talk wastewater. Okay, wastewater, we were, like I said, we're off on wastewater, right? So wastewater last year, the recommendation for the rate study was a 3% increase. We had some pretty good foresight to see that a 3% increase was not gonna generate enough revenue to deal with the expenses of the wastewater plant at Santa Clara. So the board wisely chose to go with an 8% increase in 24. As we're looking at 25, some things that are playing against us is the fact that we're staring at a 0.5 MGD expansion at Santa Clara. We're really staring at that because we didn't project the growth in terms of volume of flow very accurately. And you can trace that projection all the way back to our wastewater master plan, and that needed to be updated. So we do have an expense laying out there, in 25 to get us to the 0.5 MGD, which will bring us to a 0.75 overall capacity. If you just take the numbers right now, and in the operations report that you'll see next week, our flow, per month flow, we're up to 90,000 gallons. It's 89 and change, right? So it's really close to 90,000 gallons. So what that means is, as connections come online, calculating a 200, gallon per connection, we're going to really be close to getting toward our capacity in Santa Clara. All that to say is we know we have approximate $13 million bill out there that we're going to have to expand the Santa Clara wastewater treatment plant. And so AW Texas also, second bullet on the chart, was not affected by the 8% wastewater increase last year. AW Texas has a contract, and I'll dive into it a little bit deeper, that requires a volume assessment, like what is the flow every year, and once a year we can change that rate. That was not executed last year. We have some work to do on staff to ensure that that's executed this year. And again, the board approved 8% on wastewater last year. Okay, next chart, I'm going to get into some numbers, and this is a little bit mind-numbing, but what I wanted to show you is these are all revenues from water sales all the way down. This is everything that we get. In this chart, I've also added in impact fees and kayak fees. Those things are restricted money. As you know, we can't use that to defray just general operating cost, but those go to capital improvement. So if you would to back out those two numbers, the 3490 or 34 or 3.4 mil for impact fee and the 4.0 mil for kayak fee, our total revenue without doing anything will be 28.8 million rather. And just backing out those two things. I thought it was important to show you because this is every bit of revenue that we got projected. This is everything. And so the water cost is a portion of that operating expense. The base assumption that we did for revenue overall is a 4% increase in revenue. So some of these things, you can't project how much water you're going to sell. It depends on the year. It depends on many factors. But we know if you look at the growth rate of 1,000 meters per year, that's about a 5.5% growth rate, right? When we did our estimating, we figured a 4% growth rate to account for a dry or a wet season, but also to account for growth. That's how we estimated to get our increase in sales. It's a conservative estimate, but it's an estimate so we can account for growth and also seasonal changes. Let's go to the next chart. We'll talk about expenses a little bit. All right. So as the board knows, we're in our budget season, right? So what this chart is the direct water and wastewater operating expenses as we go down. One thing that'll jump right out at you is the highlighted line there, the CRWA purchase contract addendum is what we're calling it. This is a potential debt we have with CRWA to pay for our portion of the ARWA purchase. This is unapproved by the board, but we're looking at about $360,000 on the year to repay that, subject to board approval, of course, because we haven't presented you the budget, but we're counting it on there as a new expense that we haven't previously had. And that number I know we have board members on the CRWA Board of Trustees as well. That number has not been included yet and the CRWA's budget until this board takes action on it, right? Whether or not we're going to pay that in the amount that we have projected, which would be $30,000 a month for $300,000. The rest of this is what we expect our water costs to be. So I can tell you on GBRA, their rate has gone up 5% from, it was $175 per acre foot to $184 dollars, and that's a 5% increase. On the rest of these, I know where Edwards Aquifer, we'll get that for our permitting fees. We'll get that bill in December. So that was at a 5% rate, and Edwards Aquifer permit fees kind of takes care of that Edwards Aquifer, the Deansword, the Laguna, and then the Trinity, all of that, those leases, and then all of the CRWA stuff. So what we've done for CRWA, we've taken their budget figures based on the budget that was approved last night. And as you know, for CRWA, we're paying for the water. We're also paying for the debt service on the bonds as we remember a CRWA. So that's listed. And then moving all the way down is just the rest of the direct water and operational costs that we have for the year. Overall, when we did the budget, we projected a 5.1 increase for all the rates, but some of these we already know. We already know GBRA, we already know CRWA, Edwards Aquifer Authority. We don't quite have that nailed down yet, but we're projecting the numbers you see there. It's projected on 5.1% increase. And let's see. One other point on Martinez Creek. Martinez Creek treatment, that's actually a 7.8% increase figured in there for the treatment that we do for Martinez Creek sewer shed. To put that in perspective, just some other numbers that aren't on the chart, other expenses that we know are coming up next year that the board will see in detail in the budget. So our bond principal and interest payments is about 5.5 million a year for the Green Valley bonds, not for the ones listed there as CRWA. Our labor cost is going to be about 5.5 million next year. Our other capital, construction and non-capital, this is projects subject to the board's approval that will improve distribution systems and plant upgrades that we desperately need. I expect that figure to be around 4.2 million if approved by the board. And then a capital improvement, which does not all come out of the rate structure. It'll come out of impact fees and kayak fees. We're looking at about 8.2 million of projects that we have to do next FY. So we have considerable expenses going up next year, and you'll see all that in detail when we get to the budget. Not listed on here too is the 13 million, which is an estimate that we expect to expand the Santa Clara wastewater treatment facility by 0.5 MGD. So just keep those figures in mind. And I'll step right into the actual rate analysis if there's no questions on that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I apologize. On the CRWA expense for the ARWA project, do you know when that second bill will come due? Have you got a tentative date?
Do you know? I don't know, sir. I'll have to get you an answer on that one.
That's fine. I just didn't know if that was because that is such another large number.
It is.
If we should factor that into our future budgets.
Steve, that specific line item was one of the ones I was gonna make some suggestions on. For the rest of the board, this was an unknown expense that only was brought up very recently. I didn't think it was real until they convinced us that it was legitimate. Did some digging. They found an actual contract where I believe Mr. Dreyer had signed it at some point. So that's how long ago this was originated. But they're just asking for a payment at whatever schedule we can accommodate. If we needed to, we could scale that back a little bit. It's good to clear the debt off the table as soon as possible. But if instead of 30,000 a month, we choose to do 20, that's at our discretion. And the CRWA, in my understanding, is going to accept whatever repayment schedule we can agree to. But it is an actual debt that we need to repay.
Right. My concern though, and I understand the debt here, my concern is what's coming. Because this is not the last debt that or last bill we're going to get on that project.
Yes, sir. And to your point, Mr. Sherman, too, the contract, just for the full board, just knowledge, the contract is silent on the amounts, right? And so the reason why CRWA hasn't added this, we're calling the CRWA purchase contract addendum into their budget is because they have not provided the members what the figure was that our payments were calculated off of. And as I stand here today, we don't have that yet from CRWA. Therefore, they did not put it in their budget. And that was highlighted in their budget last night to the director. So they know that. So we're forecasting that expense. We don't know if we're going to pay it yet until we have the top figure. I mean, pretty simple. As I get into the rates, I'll kind of step quickly through these because they're pretty, illustrative of what's going on. The charts, I'll just talk about the charts real fast. The charts are all the same. So the new gen rate study, next chart. The new gen rate study, next chart, is up in the right-hand side, just so you see that was the recommendations by the rate study. I'm showing you option A right now. So option A is 8% water, 8% wastewater. And as you can see, if you look at the column, and I'll just go through this one time, FY24 column is the current column. The column highlighted in green shows you what the increase would be. And then down in the right-hand side of the slide, it just shows you a typical bill. And we did that off average usage and average monthly bill and kind of showed you, so you get a feel of what the increase actually means. So this is our base rate for all residential connections. This is showing you the 8% increase. Bottom line is the average bill would be a $4.97 increase per month if you went with this category, with this option. And I'll step through all of these relatively quickly based on that. Next chart, please. Okay, this is our special ag usage rate. So you can see 24 versus 25. The 8% increase would increase the average bill for about $7.65 on these connections for special ag use rate. Next chart. This is commercial, and I have fire on here. One highlight thing, we say fire minimum charge. That's not fire minimum charge for like if there's a fire. That's a construction meter, right? So it's really construction water when we put a meter on a fire hydrant. So just so you have that in your brain there. You can see the increase right there. We don't have a typical bill here because the commercial rates volumes vary quite greatly, right? So picking the one in the middle really doesn't give you any information, but this is a commercial rate changes. The volumetric categories, the tiers are different. And as you can see, as you get over the 500,000 gallon tier, it's relatively expensive for that category. Next chart, please. Okay, this is wastewater. So this is 8% increase on wastewater. There's a few things to call out on this one. In the upper right, you'll see the new gen rate study. The one we currently have only shows 3%. We believe it needs to be an 8% again this year. If you look out down at the bottom for Santa Clara sewer shed, so you have the flat rate as it is right now. So it'll be a $5 increase on the flat rate. But once they get into winter averaging, it'll be 5.25 versus 5.64. So that's what the rate would look like for the ratepayer. And again, I have the bullet on AW Texas on here because I have to adjust that rate separately, but I just want to call that out. I'll dive into it a little later. That's sewer.
What's the timeline on the AW Texas review and cost analysis?
For seconds.
For the AW cost analysis to be able to determine when or if that rate should be adjusted.
So the way the contract is written, and Shan can bail me out over there, the contract's written annually. We provide an analysis of the flow annually. We give it to them, to AW Texas. They can look at it, and then we can base our rate off that flow. That's kind of how the contract is written out. What I'm telling you about AW Texas is we haven't done that. Green Valley hasn't done that, and that needs to be done this year. And I believe it's December. I think it's end of calendar year, Shan, if I remember correctly.
Sorry, I don't have that date, but I can pull it up real quick.
So then we would be looking at mid-fiscal year to be able to implement a rate change?
With them, well, this way I describe it, you can implement a rate change in your vote today. I wouldn't be able to, because of the contract, adjust their rate until we comply with the terms of the contract, which is the annual volume flow assessment and then information provided to them, and then we can enact the new rates. That's how the contract's basically written. So yes, sir, it would be a middle of the year.
So when we're discussing AW Texas, if we make a motion, it applies to their rate as well with some restrictions on the contract about when we can adjust there.
That's the way I understand it, unless Shanda understands it differently than me, but yeah.
My understanding as well.
I've been here for a while and shock on my face. This is the best explanation I've ever received on how that works. So I imagine they're probably behind the curve on volume, I assume, as they've ramped up different lines and more people and production. I assume the volume of wastewater has increased.
Yeah, we believe that it has, but the problem is we don't have, we need a flow meter, right? And we're researching that. So the staff is on it. We're going to figure out how to get an accurate flow from them. And because you can see, their minimum. No other way to say it. It's low. So we have to work on that, because I would be guessing, but I think probably about
So
Still
your
significant.
so your 8%, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. So the 8% request in wastewater cost increase does not include an increase in AW Texas's rate.
not now, sir.
Thank you.
And you'll see this when we hit the other wastewater slide. So, that won't change. That point won't. Let's see, next slide, please. Okay, we're up to the 5%. Okay, so option B, 5%, 5%. And really what this does, we'll step through it really quickly. You can see the average bill on the base rates there. If there's no questions there, I'll step through the next one. Average increase for special ag, $4.90 on the average bill. Next one. For commercial, it just changes the base rates per size meter, and then the volumetrics just adjusted down to 5%. Next slide. For the wastewater, same thing here. For 8% in this option. So it's the exact same slide that you were showing on wastewater. Option B is 5% and 8%. Okay, next chart. Back. Go back. This is wastewater 8%. You want to go back to the base rate? Go back to the base rate. There you go. There you go, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Forward to option C, please. Okay, option C is 5% and 5%, right? And this just takes, the water is exactly the same, 5%. Next chart. Next chart on ag, same chart as before. Next chart. Same on commercial. Next chart. Wastewater. Wastewater 5%. Average bill increase $3.49. And then on the winter averaging would be 3.25. Right. So, okay. And then option D, go to next chart. We don't have option D because option D is just keep the rates as they are right now from FY24. So that's a look at all the rates. What I'm going to do right now is talk you through some specific accounts. I'm not asking for the board to make a decision on this, but I'm informing the board on the actions that I need to take to get these particular accounts back where they need to be based on board's past action or board's vote today. So next chart, please. Okay, McQueenie Estates. I'm going to dive into McQueenie Estates a little bit. So McQueenie Estates had a 5% increase in 24, but they were already below the standard rate for all residential customers. And when we did the rate study last year and it was presented to the board, the rate study assumed that we would top off McQueenie Estates to be equal with every other base rate payer. That in fact did not occur. And so what we need to do is bring them back up to what the base rate is for everyone. And so as you can see, bringing them up there to the 5% increase, if you chose 5% or chose 8, or this is the 5% increase slide. it would equal a 32% increase overall to get them up to the base rate in 24, plus get them onto the new 25 rate. Just so you know what we're talking about, there's 243 customers there. Their average usage is $54.93. Their average bill is $39, and plus tax there, it comes out to $39.79. Their typical bill at the 5% water increase.
Mr. Gage, a quick
sir.
question, and this may be more for Shan. Because their rate increase, if we choose to accept that, is going to be significantly more, do we legally need to notice them differently?
But we would need to notice them just like we did anyone else.
Okay.
But the way the contract works is it's a retail, it's a wholesale contract, but it uses retail pricing terms.
Right.
And so we're entitled to charge them whatever we charge the rest of our customers.
Shan, I think you're talking about the mobile home park. This.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Phil. I'm off base. Sorry.
So I do have a follow-up question here. So if we were to increase the water rate on McQueenie Estates, our two options on water, suggested options are 5% and 8%. What would the percentage specific to that development be? Oh, I'm saying if the whole district is an 8% jump, McQueenie Estates would need to be a
5% is 32%.
That was my concern. So it's drastically different. It's
So an 8%
relatively
would be
small
like 40%.
customers.
Next slide. 8% is 37.
So Shan, real quick, I think to Bob's point, as far as notification to those customers, 243 customers, the letters that they would be receiving to explain to them the situation on, I guess, pretty much the discount that they've been receiving for quite some time is now corrected, and they are going to get current with the rest of the ratepayers in the market. So would you advise that they specifically get a letter specifically to their situation?
Oh, definitely. And I'm thinking of the wrong contract. So was this Southwest Water Corp?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Is McQueenie Estates built out? Is it?
That's been there for years. So the
there's
way I
no more
understand the
expansion,
history, and
it's
and-
capped at 240 LUEs?
that's just the number of homes in there, in that area. So if Gabe, help me out here. The way I understand McQueenie Estates is that it was acquired by Green Valley. It had its own water system years ago. It was acquired by Green Valley at some point in time. There's no new construction there. It's a built out neighborhood of 243 homes, and it's not a trailer park, right? I mean, it's on residential meters for all those customers.
And
To have Green Valley take.
And the history that I recall on this is when we absorbed it, their system was failing. They needed us to help. We chose to help. Their rate was significantly lower than ours. And the board, over a variety of boards over a couple years, increased theirs a little more to get closer. And it's my remembrance that last year was the last intermediate bump before we intended to bring them up to the current district-wide rate. Now, apparently that didn't happen.
Right.
So they're gonna, if we continue that plan, they're gonna get a little bit of an extra bump.
It's my
But
concern.
that was the history of this particular small development that I recall.
Yeah, it's just for legally, I'm concerned that we need to notice them differently because they are going to get a different increase.
But yeah, I completely agree. They need. But it's also the board's, determination on whether bump the entire 32% or policy issue.
So
Title to do it.
What if we I don't know if the board would entertain it. What if we did half now and then the other half in 6 months? We could vote now and schedule it. They would get what, 16
We would have to
approximate.
adjust our budgets differently.
It's
So, and I think for
I think this is gonna
continuity,
hit the budget too hard.
it won't hit,
200
no, it won't hit
43.
too hard, but the continuity and the fair practice in the market, we need to get everybody to the current as fast as we can on the same level playing field, no favoritism. If the situation is rectified already and, the time is now, then the time is now. To delay it any further, I think would just kick the can down the road.
So that was one. So that was, I just showed you the 5% McQueenie and the 8%. So whichever, base decision the board makes, I will apply it, at accordingly for that. Okay, next chart. Okay, the wholesale contract. So this is one that was called out on the earlier slide in the very beginning of the brief, right? So this wholesale contract is a system operated by, I'm getting feedback. I don't know where. Is mic open? Okay. This is one I mentioned in the beginning, that the rate study assumed that it would be transitioned to the commercial rate. If you just look at the facts right now. So right now, they're paying $3.70, as their lowest tier, and there is no wholesale minimum charge per connection. So, the account's been open since 2004. This wholesale contract has changed hands a couple of times to a different owner. And so there was no 5% increase applied to the contract in 24, but their usage, almost 1 million gallons. I mean, it's a lot, right? And so it needs to be on the commercial rate. So the average bill is $5,000, $5,111 a month for this particular contract. And if we applied the commercial rate, you can see the significant difference because that is a significant amount of water that's being consumed by this contract.
The adjusted rate includes the moving to the current commercial rate plus the increase.
Yes, sir. So what it would be is if you vote on whatever commercial rate it's going to be, I'll apply that commercial rate, change them to a commercial account. Like the thing on the slide that I probably should have put on there, that shows you what they're currently at and what they're projected to be at. It has not changed. And so this is the need to switch them to a commercial rate, as the rate study suggested we do last year. And so whatever rate you vote on, that's the rate I'll apply, change them to a commercial account.
How many current accounts do we have on commercial rate?
Oh, we got
Just approximate.
about 5.
Yeah,
So
but
not many.
that's a
right.
lot of water out of that one user, though. Wonder what purpose it goes to, and that's just a rhetorical. I don't need to know.
This particular one serves, it's like a neighborhood or something. Yeah, but this is part of my notes for the staff. When we went through this analysis, right? Once we're going to do this presentation, we're going to get in the truck, right? We're going to go see exactly all the addresses that we're serving off this master meter. This is a master meter, right? So what I intend to do is switch them to a commercial rate, as was
So it's
recommended.
multiple people off of 1 meter.
Yeah.
Oh, so just screams commercial anyway. So, okay.
That's right.
So Shan, same question as last time. They're going to receive a specialized notice to them for their current situation as well, correct?
Well, this is under a contract is my
It's under a contract.
recollection. And this is probably the one I was incorrectly talking about
That's right.
5 minutes ago. So we're entitled to charge them our volumetric retail rate. And so I think we just give them notice under the contract.
Retail or commercial rate?
Well,
Commercial.
it's both, but in my little world, both are retail, but it's just, yes,
It's a
a
different-
commercial rate is a subspecies of.
But, to answer your question though, my intention with these, there's a few other accounts that I want to change to commercial. My intention with them is to go meet with them and provide them, a letter directly. The McQueenie Estate's a little bit different, right? Because they're individual homeowners and meters, right? So they'll get a notice just like, we'll make sure that happens. These commercial ones, I'm gonna go see them. And, we'll do that for each one of them. And I got more than one, so there's a couple more. But this was the wholesale contract that was called out on the first chart. Okay, next chart. Okay, we got a series of trailer parks, right? Lakeside Water Rates is one of those. They got a 2-inch master meter. They serve about 13 to 15 lots. They use about 95,000, gallons per month. They did not have a 5% increase applied to this account in FY24. And this account needs to change to commercial rate. That's why it's in bold there. And by doing that, they $479 is their average bill. We move them to commercial rate at whatever the board's decision is, 5 or 8%. You'll see what the end result will be. This is another one that I will go to and provide the letter to.
On this one, if I believe the board's intent was to raise the water rate 5% last year
It was.
on our customers. So for the reasons that we need the money for O&M and
That's
to
right.
operate the business. So we need to charge them a proper rate. If they were not charged the increase last year, do we charge last year's and this year's, or
On the new rate. And
just move them
Get 'em
to
current. Just getting
the,
them current.
the,
Yeah.
Well, in this case, that step's not even necessary, right? Because, looking at, we're gonna put them on a commercial rate just due to the volume that, that we have up there. And due to the fact that, they're essentially, on, the water, so I'm gonna put them on commercial rate. And Shannon says that's okay to do so because they are a commercial entity. So this is, it's a trailer, trailer park, trailer community.
And as far as the recovery from last year, that ship has sailed.
well, and it's frustrating that it didn't get handled correctly last year.
Agree.
I guess my intent is to have the entire district paying a rate so that Mr. King's not paying one rate, I'm not paying another, Sherry's not paying another. It should all be uniform.
Right.
In my opinion. So
I'm also kind of concerned that there may be a deeper problem here because we have not determined what is considered commercial versus residential property. So do we have a standard or a rule by which we apply current rates to accounts?
So,
And I'm wondering why a commercial account is not considered a commercial account.
well, I mean, it's commercial. I think I'll fix what Shan said, right? So he said they're both retail. It's just a difference. So we're selling at retail water. One is at the residential rate, one is at the commercial rate. It's still a retail sale. That's what I think what Shan was referring to. But
opposed to wholesale.
I asked Shan this question about the difference between residential and commercial. And I don't know if I'll speak for him, but I'll tell you what I understood is that if we're selling to a business, right, that is in fact charging others for the use of the water, that would be considered commercial. Right. And so, and as long as Shan's good with that, did I describe that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So then we're talking about a kind of implementing a new policy change that has not been enforced in the past. You're going to be a hero.
Well, I'm not seeking to be, but the problem is, so yes, I agree with you, right? Because we haven't, to my finding, right, when we were studying this problem, the board voted for an 8% or 5% increase on water last year, right? It was not applied to these accounts because they're different, right? And so we didn't address the difference. So I'm not saying that it was addressed through neglect or not addressed through neglect. It was just not addressed because they're different. The way to, in my mind, to fix that difference is you treat them all the same. You put them all on a commercial, account or commercial rate, and then they're all the same. And we fix.
Well, in my mind, a commercial account would be any account that is a registered business of the state of Texas, not just reselling our water. So I think this question needs to be examined more closely, and a new policy needs to be set as to how those rates are applied, just to make sure that we're servicing the account properly and that we are getting what we should.
Yes, sir. And I think, I know when we bring the rate order to you, I'll make sure we have that in there. Okay, Gabe? to define the difference between, Shan, define the difference or define what a commercial account is in our policy. And you'll have the opportunity to vote on that when we have the rate order, I think on the 22nd is what our target is. But acknowledged all. Next chart's the same thing. Next chart's another one. Landa, right? 5% was not increased, it was applied in 24. 2-inch master meter, 54,000 gallons. I want to put them on a commercial rate too to make them the same. So that's Landa. Next one should be Val's, I think. Val's water rate, same thing. No 5% implied. A significant amount of water not needs to go to the commercial rate. The next one is Cypress Green. This is a very large consumer water. It's a very big, trailer park. I don't know the proper term is. I'm calling it trailer park. I don't know if that's right. But anyway, needs to go to commercial rate. 758,000 gallons, a month. So it's a large consumer. But that's all that. I think I have one more left, and it's the AW Texas, I believe. Okay, here's AW Texas water. We don't have an issue with water, right? That's not the issue with AW Texas. That's their new rates for 25. 5%. What's the next one? That's it. I didn't show you the 8%. I have am I missing one or something hidden? I was expecting. No, we already handled that. So those were the accounts that I needed to take care of and adjust. And it's really just those last ones, switching 5 of them to commercial and then fixing McQueenie.
I want to make sure I clarify what I said too. I'm not suggesting that we unduly punish somebody that's called in your vernacular, a trailer park or
Sure.
manufactured home
Sure.
home park. We need to make the determination what is commercial and what is residential,
That's correct.
regardless of what's sitting on that property. That,
Understood.
thank you.
Understood.
Yeah, and I have a question that tags on with that. What do we consider an HOA? When an HOA comes and they want water service for the actual homeowners association,
Residential.
we do consider them residential. Okay, good.
Normally, the situations you're talking about there is when you have an HOA that's got a swimming pool, and they have a facility. They have maybe a 1-inch, irrigation for like a front entrance or something. Those are all charged at the residential rate. Right, Kim? Right. Good to go. Okay. So just in summary, this lays it out for the board. Happy to answer any questions. We do have in backup the whole rate study. If you wanted to plow into like CPIs and all those things, we could certainly do that. But the options are there, A, B, or C, or D. Option being 8 and 8, B being 5 and 8, C being 5 and 5, and D is take no action. Staff recommendation supported by the rate study is 8% and 8%. The difference being in that is our wastewater 8% is not necessarily supported by the rate study, but is supported by data and what we know of our sewer shed, particularly for Santa Clara. And that's a recommendation pending discussion or board questions.
President, based on the presentation at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the 8%, the option A. Of course, we're still open for plenty of discussion, but I would just like to get that on the table.
Seconded.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Last call for
Yes.
questions.
So the one thing that jumped out at me, and in the grand scheme of things, inflation is, everyone understands inflation. Your grocery bill's enormous compared to what it was just a few years ago. $4, $3.15 is what I jotted down for water, and $5.25 and $3.25. Reasonable dollar amount increase on the average, in my opinion. The one thing that I want to be careful of is we mentioned that we have a lot of capital costs and rate increase to cover capital cost. So we're fixing things, we're getting there, but my opinion is the capital cost should be paid with our development fees. And if our development fees are shy of what they should be, we need to make those adjustments. The ratepayers that have lived, their community was built 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. They paid their capital fees at the time the units were built, in my opinion. I want to be very careful that we're not raising rates to cover new capital that, Mr. King's home is way over here and he's going to pay a higher rate to cover a capital expense way over there that he doesn't make any use of. The O&M is increasing. Our light bill is higher, all of our costs around the facility, pumps cost more, labor costs more, fuel costs more. All of that is O&M. I can justify a rate increase to cover O&M, but I want to be very careful that we're not increasing rates, tying it to capital needs. That's kind of a statement.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that real quick. So one thing that we've seen Mr. Gage do in the past 3 months is save where he can, slash costs wherever he can to make the best bang for the buck. There's a lot that we are behind on as far as improvement of current infrastructure that our ratepayers are needing to be improved, redone, or, taken care of accordingly. So in raising rates, they're getting their return on their investment as well, making sure that they got the clean pipes and adequate water, pumps and generators and things that we need for redundancy and taking care of them when they need that water. So if CRWA, ARWA, GBRA, that's a baseline increase. That's something we cannot avoid. So that is setting our threshold, unfortunately, at a higher mark than we care for. I think in the next year, we're going to see more improvement to the budget and, Mr. Gage saving where he can. I would hope that the ratepayers understand that we are making up for things that have not been done in 5-10 years past that should have been done at that time for us to, be at a normal situation. We're getting there. It's just going to take, a couple more years to get to where we need to be. So.
And to the point too, we are looking actively, and I don't remember, I'm having a senior moment, what impact fees we have adjusted, and some of them are already in study.
And we are. We have increased a lot of our kayak fees, impact fees. We're going to be doing water acquisition fees coming up. There's a lot of fees that have been outdated that will take care of the future developments, future needs. And we are righting those wrongs, right? Those things need to be on a schedule, reviewed constantly to make sure we are current and not neglecting those that need attention. So I know in October, Mr. Gage and the executive committee, we're going to be mapping out the whole year. We're going to make sure everything is addressed and not missed. So, but good
comment,
to your point.
if I may, and perhaps you would agree with this, Mr. Frias, this is a catch-up year.
We're playing catch up, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't, and mind you, the board was mindful during COVID, right after COVID, the year after that one. So we're now having to get back to a norm. And, we were considerate back then in the past, which I would hope people appreciated that then when they mostly needed it. But unfortunately, we cannot keep that going.
Right.
So we have to get back to business as needed. So with that motion in a second, do I have any other last questions, comments?
I'd like to make just a quick comment. First of all, hearing the information, I can't tell you how much I appreciate a concise report and getting good info. Thank you very much. I'm really frustrated that looking at this information shows how glaringly subjective rate increases were applied. And I don't think anybody on this board was made aware of that subjective approach to rate increases. So I'm not entirely on board with Mr. Sherman's request on money being spent where money should be spent in rate increases. I think this fair and equitable approach to rate increases to ensure that everybody is serviced equally and everybody is charged the equal rate, I think is absolutely necessary to make sure that we are being good servants of the community. So thank you for this information, and you've got a big task in implementing this new direction. But as for me, I support you 100%. Thank you.
Anybody else? Last call? All right, I have a motion in a second. Let's do a roll call, starting with Mr. King.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passed. New rates are 8% water, 8% wastewater, effective October 1st. Notices will be in the mail at the next round of billing cycles.
Now, included in our motion are everything that fell under that as far as the commercial rate?
That is with the
changes?
understanding
They
that
don't have to be
all,
Separately voted?
that is with the understanding that everything that was addressed is going to current and not having the prorated amounts they've been having.
Right.
So,
That's appropriate, Shan. That vote covers it all?
That's right.
Thank you.
okay, the way it was presented
There
to
are some,
us.
there are some, publication and notice requirements and things too, but but October 1st is eminently doable.
Mr. President, I'll cover real quick for
Yeah.
everyone. So kind of the way ahead right now. So, okay, we got the vote, we got the rates. Appreciate it, board, for that. The bills go out on the 19th of this month.
Which is Monday.
So notices will go out. We're required to do a 30-day notice to all customers of the rate increase. That puts us on track to hit the 1 October. That's why it was critical that we bring it to you at this point for a decision for two reasons. One, so we can notify our people properly with enough notice. And then the second one is to build the budget, right? The third comment I'll make on this, kind of the road ahead, we're working on the rate order that I'm looking to present to the board next week. What the rate order does is take the rates you just approved and then has the other fees that we discussed at a couple of points, from kayak fee, acquisition fee, trip charges, all the miscellaneous fees that we have will be in that rate order. It'll become the one-stop shop. You'll see all the rates right there on the website. I expect to get that to you next week, as long as we get it through the lawyers, Shan. And then you'll vote on that, and we'll be done with rates, and then we'll be on to budget. Thank you, sir. Thank you, board.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we're moving to item agenda F, adopt order calling and notice of election of 2 directors, setting the dates for election and early voting for November 5th, 2024. And Shan, that needs to be edited to where it says 2024, not 2023 election, and take action as necessary. Pam.
So moved with the change noticed.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Pam, did you have any comments on the election stuff? We're good on our end. Thank you very much. All right, so ayes have it. Going to agenda item G, hear updates on items below from GVC General Counsel. Shan,
I don't have any updates for today's meeting.
we're good to go on that?
I may have a couple next week.
Okay. Mr. Gage, do we need to go into executive session for personnel matters?
No, sir, no personnel matters that we need to discuss today, sir.
Awesome. All right, we're going to, nothing on item I, because we didn't go into executive session. We're going to item J, consideration of proposed items to be included on next month's board meeting agenda. So we already had our scheduled, board agenda review. That should be going out this Friday, so everybody will be getting their packets via email. So that's on that. Item K, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's adjourned. Meeting is concluded at 9:58.
The new record.
58 minutes.